Good evening, everyone. It is once again Ted the Speed Learner, and this particular video response is going to go out to David S., and that's because you left several comments on my Electric Light Orchestra video, and might I say, they were fair critiques. They really were. And because they were fair critiques, I'm going to give you a fair response. I don't get that very often on my videos. As a matter of fact, as far as I can recall, it's only been D. Lukens 9 and Andrew Wyatt, until you came along, that has ever given me this kind of fair response to one of my videos. Most of the stuff I usually get is pretty much junk, and I could just dismiss it rather quickly. But in your case, I just can't do that. Because you were fair. And because you were fair, I'm also going to be fair. As a matter of fact, just to show you how fair I am, I made a whole bunch of notes here. But the one thing I will say is this, that you ought to make sure all your ducks are in a row before critiquing one of my videos, because I will equally catch some of your mistakes in as much as admitting my own. That's the way I am. That's totally fair. I made some mistakes, and so did you. So, let's go through and let me show you what mistakes I made, what mistakes you made, and like I said, this was totally fair. It really was. So I have to give you credit for that. This was a well done response to one of my videos, and I applaud you for it. I really do. So, being fair, this is what I'll say. First of all, I never intended for this video to be a full discography of the Electric Light Orchestra. I never did. I will admit that I should have stated in that video that that particular video was an overview. I should have done that. And credit to you, because I didn't. And I'm sorry for that. I do apologize for that one. I should have said that, and I didn't, and I really apologize. Of course, there were a couple of clues in that particular video that should have indicated that that was an overview video. And what clues were they? Well, number one, the video length. I mean, that was only a 3 to 4 minute video. It wasn't like a 20 to 25 minute discography. It was like a 4-minute overview of the Electric Light Orchestra. That was the first clue. The second clue was the fact that it was a video response to somebody else. It wasn't like a formalized presentation, which I often do on this channel. The third clue was, at the end of the video, I told everybody to look at the hyperlink down in the description below for more information. So obviously I wasn't trying to cover everything. So that should have indicated to everybody that this was not a full discography, this was not a fully detailed video, so on and so forth. See what I mean? So those were little clues that should have indicated, you know, this wasn't going to be complete and all detailed and the whole 9 yards. Alright? And this particular issue here will come up again in my next critique of your critique of me. Okay? Now, let's see. Now, also keep in mind that in that particular video, I said facts that I dug up. That means I didn't dig up everything. That's another thing that should have clued you in, that that was not a full discography video. Okay? Alright. Now, on the night I uploaded that particular video, I failed to include any hyperlinks in the description below. Okay? And when I got up the next morning, I placed the wrong hyperlink in the description. And I've already discussed this with you in the comments of that particular video. So, anyway, the point is, how could you possibly have read the material that I referenced if I didn't give you the right hyperlink to do that with? As a matter of fact, the hyperlink I gave just take you back to that video. Well, when you brought that to my attention, which you were right to do, and I give you credit for that one, when you brought that to my attention, I actually placed the proper hyperlink in the description of that video. And so now everybody can read that. I will place that hyperlink again in the description of this video so you guys can see that as well. So you had every right, and that should have been your first critique of me. Why didn't you place the right hyperlink in the video description? You should have done that, and had you said that, you'd have been great on that one. That was fair. And I apologize to you, and I apologize to anybody else that watched that video and are watching this one now. I 100% apologize for that. I was so tired, I didn't realize that I put the wrong hyperlink in the video description. So, kudos for catching that, and I'll try to be more attentive next time. Alright? Alrighty, now then. Your initial response to my video was as follows. Anyone discussing ELO and the genius of Jeff Lynne is a great thing, but the source you pulled your information from was laughably bad. Again, I say, because you didn't have the right hyperlink, how could you possibly have evaluated that? Then you go on to describe that you thought because of what I said, that that's what they said. Let me tell you something. Because I wasn't doing a full presentation like I normally do, I actually glossed over that, and that's where I made some of my mistakes. And for you catching that, I give you another credit for that. I should have been more attentive to the material I was reading, and I should have been more clerical. So, again, another credit to you, because I really glossed over that information and I didn't actually do the right kind of actual reading that I probably should have done. So, another kudos to you for that. But I do say that if you're going to critique the source material I'm getting this from, make sure you've read that source material. You didn't even have any idea what source material I used because I didn't provide the proper hyperlink. This is where I start saying, keep your ducks in a row. Okay? So, anyway, again, I say there were several things that I should have done, and you were right in pointing them out. One, I should have said that was an overview. Two, I should not have glossed over the material. Three, I should have provided the proper hyperlink. And for all those, I do apologize. So, kudos to you for picking up on all that. Alright. Then you stated I should be more careful because everyone would believe what I stated in the video and wouldn't verify the facts I presented in the video. Now this is where you start making mistakes. To use the word everybody actually includes yourself, Crazy Josh Cravey, and me, and everybody else. Now, I will admit there are a lot of people who will do this, and for that I do apologize. Okay, I know there's a lot of people that just watch my video and take everything I said verbatim and never check it out for themselves. And for that, I would say to you people, don't do that. That's sloppy. I was sloppy in what I did, and that's not a good thing. So, I will admit that's a sloppy way of doing things. Okay? However, you caught all these mistakes, and Crazy Josh Cravey caught some of these mistakes, and of course now that I'm doing this, I caught a few of my own as well. So the thing is that you shouldn't evaluate the source material based on anything I said, and more importantly, you should never say everybody's going to do that because you didn't, Crazy Josh Cravey didn't, I didn't, so therefore don't include yourself in your own critique. Not a good idea. Okay? Now then, the next thing, it goes right into the source material itself. You said, furthermore, I say here, furthermore, you stated that Rick Price was never an original member. Well, that's not exactly accurate. Now, you and I both know that because I've already responded to you on this, but I'll tell everybody this. He was not a formally credited member of the band. That's true. Okay? Now, here's the story. Jeff Lynne joined the band The Move shortly before they broke up. They were already working on an album at the time. That album, instead of being the next album for The Move, ended up being the very first album of the Electric Light Orchestra. Rick Price had already recorded tracks. He did bass guitar. He recorded tracks for that particular album. As a matter of fact, it was for 2 of the songs on that particular album. But the thing was, one of the band members left, and you can go ahead and read that. You can find out which one it was. And you can say, okay, that particular band member actually left, which played a key role. It was a key factor in Jeff Lynne's decision to form the Electric Light Orchestra. Okay, and he and Roy Wood and Bev Bevan got together and said, you know what, it's probably a good idea to form the Electric Light Orchestra and leave The Move. Okay, Rick Price decided not to go with them. However, he had already done work for that particular album. Alright, so what they did was that when they actually made the Electric Light Orchestra album, the very first one, they removed Rick Price's recordings and replaced them. Alright, that's what they did. And that's why, okay, and that's why Rick Price was not formally credited with being a member of that band. But did he do work for their first album? Yes, he did. It just was removed before the album was published and sent off to all the record stores. So that is kind of a technicality. Technically, I am correct, but it's on a technicality, so it's really kind of like you were partially correct, I was partially correct, and it kind of wibble-wobbles on that one. So I do have to give you half credit for that one, so I'm more than willing and ready to admit that I made a partial mistake there. All right. Then you said, after Wood leaving, Jeff took full control of the band. That would be not only lead singing, but all songwriting, multi-instrument playing, arranging, and very importantly, producing, as he would become a producer to the stars later, including the Beatles in the 1990s. Now, alrighty. I never said in my video that he didn't do any of this stuff. Okay? I just said that he became the lead singer of ELO. Well, he became the lead singer of The Move, which became the ELO. Okay? That's what I said. I never denied any of this. I never even mentioned any of this in my video. So, I never denied that. That's the first thing. Alrighty. Now, as for the Beatles, well, didn't the Beatles band break up in 1970? How could Jeff Lynne produce anything for the Beatles if they broke up in 1970? That I'd like to know. I really would. So, if you want to give me an answer to that, I'd be thrilled to hear it. You probably have some information there that obviously I don't. I don't know. But if you do, that's fine. If not, I'm sitting here going, wait a minute, the Beatles? Yeah, I have some questions about that one. Alright. The next so-called error that I made was, you stated in your comment, keyboardist Richard Tandy was a most consistent member too when joining the band, starting with the second record. He was also inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2017. Now, the first thing I'm going to say is, I never denied that he was a consistent member. I never even mentioned his name, so that never came up. All I said was the two most consistent members were Bev Bevan and Jeff Lynne. Now, the thing is that Bev Bevan briefly left the band once and came back, and then the next time he left for good. That's pretty consistent for 16 years, okay? All right, now keep in mind that Bev Bevan stayed with the band for 16 straight years. Okay? Now, what about Richard Tandy? He stayed with the band for 14 years. Okay? Then he returned to the band in 2000. Then he left in 2001. Then he returned in 2014. And he's been with the band ever since. So he was kind of back and forth right after the band broke up. So it's kind of it's kind of a tough one on that. I'll give you partial credit, and I'll give myself partial credit on that one. When you leave a band only one time in 16 years, that's pretty consistent. But I have to say that Richard Tandy did come back several times, so there's consistency there too. So I'll give you partial credit for that one. That's kind of an even keel on that one, all right? So, now, your next critique of my video, well, I have to give you this one. I really do. For the most part, I do, okay? It becomes the point where you said, where you were talking about the song, Can't Get It Out of My Head. Yes, it was from the very first album. I will give you that. It actually reached, I looked this up, all right? Hang on just a second. Alright, it actually became a top 10 hit. If I remember right, it came in at number 9. It really did, which actually beat just about every other song that ELO ever published throughout their career. So, yes, it was a good song, it was a top 10 hit, and it definitely was on the first album. I'm sorry I didn't mention that one. I probably should have. As a matter of fact, I apologize for not doing so. I really do. You had that one right. I will say, however, it was a sleeper hit. Do I remember the song? Absolutely. I really do. But I never really considered it some of their best work. Okay, when I think of ELO, I think of Strange Magic, Telephone Line, All Over the World. I think of those songs. And even though none of them actually ranked higher than Can't Get It Out of My Head, I think they were actually better songs. I really do. So, I have to give you, for the most part, a point on that one. You really were right on the money on that one. Die-hard ELO fans would remember that song instantly. Now, I will say that growing up in the 1970s, which I did, I can tell you that because of ABBA, because of the Bee Gees, because of Elton John, because of Billy Joel, and so many others, that particular song, to the average person that's listening to ELO, even though they may like the band, they may not be die-hard fans of ELO, Can't Get It Out of My Head would not be one of the songs that would just automatically pop up in their heads. And that's because, like I said, it was a sleeper hit. Good song, don't deny that at all. But, like I said, I didn't consider it one of their best works. I can name you 4 or 5 other works of theirs that definitely were better than that one. Okay? Not that it was a bad song, it was a good song, it really was. But it's kind of, it's more mellow than what I really look for in a song. It's not that I don't like mellow songs, because I do, but that one was a little mellow for ELO. It really was. So, like I said, for the most part, I do have to give you a point on that. You were absolutely right on calling me out on that one. But, you know, it wasn't one of, it's not one of their most memorable hits. Okay, for diehards, yes. But for the average, everyday person that's heard some of ELO, but it really hasn't gone into the deep parts of ELO, it wouldn't be something they would immediately recall. I guarantee that. Okay. Then, you said ELO has many more than a few additional hits. Several huge pop culture impressing singles came from the albums New World Record and Out of the Blue that predate Shine and Don't Bring Me Down. ELO had top 20 Billboard top 20 hits and more if counting top 40. Well, let's take a look at this, shall we? First of all, I said they had several more hits. Not a few more, but several more. They had quite a few, actually. Okay? So, quote me accurately. I did not say a few more. I said several more. And they did. Okay? Now, let's take a look at the hits in question. They had 18 songs that ranked in Billboard's Top 40 countdown during their career. Now, this is very impressive. I will give you that. It really is. But it is not as impressive as some other bands that came from that same era. Let's take the Bee Gees, for instance. They had 29 songs that ranked high on Billboard's Top 40. Several of those actually held the #1 position. This is something that ELO never achieved in the United States. They just never did. Overseas they did, but over here in the United States, they didn't achieve that. You can look that up. Now, what about some of the former members of the band The Beatles? Since you brought that up, let's bring that up. Let me tell you something. A lot of their hits went much higher than anything that ELO ever produced. Let's be fair about that, okay? Granted, ELO did a very good job, and I praise them for every song they ever put out as far as the 18 that I'm talking about here. But let's be very honest. Paul McCartney, John Lennon, George Harrison, Billy Joel, Elton John, the Bee Gees, ABBA. Oh, I could just go on and on. These people had far more hits than these guys did. And you can check this out for yourself. So, yeah, they had a lot of hits, all right, but they didn't have them as high as some of the people that lived in. And I know I lived in that era, so I know exactly what I'm talking about here. Okay. Then you go on to say ELO had 2 more worldwide top 20 40 song successes after Hold On Tight. And then you cited Rock and Roll is King and Calling America. Okay. Now then, I made an error here myself. First of all, I did not realize that the song Twilight was on the same album as Hold On Tight. I should have mentioned that. It was another hit for ELO, and I never mentioned it. So yes, I was wrong there. Now, when I made these notes, and I made these notes last night, if I recall correctly, I made these notes last night or the night before, it doesn't matter. The point is that when I made these notes, I actually checked out Rock and Roll is King and Calling America. Good songs, but I can tell you this right now, when those songs came out, I don't remember ever hearing them on the radio or on a PA system or anywhere else. I can honestly tell you that that night when I made these notes, that was the first time I'd heard of either one of those songs. I'll be perfectly honest with you on that. Yes, they did make the charts, and they got pretty high. I couldn't believe just how high they got, even though I had never heard of them until this year. But they were what I consider sleeper hits. Good songs, but not that memorable. Okay, if you were to ask the average Joe on the street, not a diehard ELO fan, but an average Joe on the street about either one of these songs, they probably would not have any clue as to what you're talking about. And that's the truth. So, yes, they were good songs. I'm glad they made them, but they were called sleeper hits because they weren't something that stood out. They really weren't. And that's why they didn't rise as high as they probably should have. Now, I will grant you that during that period of time, hip-hop was coming out, rap was coming out, they were dominating the music scene, so it was kind of hard for those songs to compete with that. I will give you that one. But, like I said, they just weren't memorable. I can see right in those songs some of the reasons why ELO started to break up at that point. Okay, so, and that leads us into our next one, and I can see some of the reasons why ELO was starting to falter at that point. Okay? Now, you said Bev playing with Black Sabbath did not lead to the demise of ELO. I tend to disagree a little bit. Let me tell you something. When a band member has been with you for 16 solid years and finally says, you know what, I'm out of here, I'm sure that factored into Jeff Lynne's decision to pursue other projects. I don't say that's the last answer. I'm not saying that was the total answer, but I'm telling you, and you can ask him if you'd like, go ahead, ask Jeff Lynne. I think that had something to do with it. I'm not saying that that was the last thing that it was done, but I'm certainly sure that that factored into his decision. All right, now it wasn't the last thing. I'm granting you, Jeff went out, he found other projects. Granted, great, you get a half point for that. But I'm going to say because of just knowing what that would do to a band, to have somebody that has been there for 16 years suddenly say, hey, I'm out of here. That gets somebody to thinking, and I'm sure that's what happened to Jeff Lynne. He was thinking, man, what's going to happen next? So maybe not the last thing that ever happened to that band, but I'm sure it played a role in Jeff's decision to do this. Okay? Alrighty. So anyway, the last argument I will address in this video is when you said Jeff did not join up again with fellow band members to make the latest album, Alone in the Universe. It is essentially a solo Lynne album recorded in his home studio under the name Jeff Lynne's ELO. Well, I have to give you half a point. I should not have said band members, okay? I should have said and a band member. Because, believe it or not, Richard Tandy did join up with Jeff Lynne when he made Jeff Lynne's ELO. That is a fact. And you can check this out for yourself. There are hyperlinks down here. You can check that out for yourself. So, half point for you, half point for me. So, now then, I have placed in the description of this video below several hyperlinks that will verify the information I was giving to you. Okay, that I have given to you in this video. I have to say, you were pretty fair on this. There were some mistakes I actually made. And as you can see, I had to give you some credit. You really did find some stuff that wasn't entirely accurate. I glossed over the information, and for that I do apologize. It should have been far more thorough, and I will try to do that in the future, even if I'm doing an overview. So you had some valid points on this one. But I think I had some valid points of my own. So, kudos for you. I hope you continue doing stuff like this. I hope you keep me in check, because I tell you what, you should. That was very fair of you, and I have to give you credit for that. Alright, so I'm going to applaud you for the things you did figure out and the things you did discuss, and this was very good. I was thrilled to do this. I really was. When I did all this, I did this heavy research, I was like, well, you know what, this is really kind of interesting. It really is. Now then, I do have a final note for Crazy Josh Cravey. You had mentioned something about the song Don't Bring Me Down. Most of the information you presented was absolutely accurate, but it wasn't detailed enough. So, I'm going to call you on the lack of details on that one. It's not that you got anything particularly wrong, you just didn't provide enough details. So I will provide the missing details, and we'll go on with this, alright? It is absolutely true that Jeff Lynne made up the word Gruß, okay? However, Reinhold Mack, a Musicland studio engineer in Germany, thought that Jeff was using a German greeting. That's where they get the German greeting thing, alright? The word, as Crazy Josh Cravey indicated, was later changed to Bruce due to the fact that the audience knew nothing about the German greeting or the made-up word. They didn't know about either thing, okay? And they just didn't know how to say Gruß, so they said Bruce. And so Jeff Lynne finally changed it to Bruce because that's what the audience thought he was saying. So that's the complete story. So very good you brought that up. You did bring out a bunch of very good details. You just didn't quite finish up the story. Now that I have finished it up for you, there you go. But I did enjoy your video response to me. Thank you very much for submitting that. Some of the things you said in that video, some of the songs were not as memorable to me as they were to you. I'm glad you enjoyed them. I didn't quite get into that part of ELO. They weren't really particularly bad songs. They just weren't that memorable to me. You got to keep in mind, my biggest taste in that time was the Bee Gees. And so ELO, with a lot of their songs, kind of followed suit with the Bee Gees on that. It was a lot of disco stuff. So, like I said, not bad songs, just not that memorable to me. So, but I do thank you for participating. And like I said, David S., Crazy Josh Cravey, you did a fair critique of my video. You really did, and I'm proud of you for catching what you did, because that was good. That was good research. It really was. And if you guys ever find anything else on that kind of stuff, by all means, let me know. That was really good. That was really good. So, like I said, I have provided some hyperlinks. I do encourage my viewers to do more research, and if you find anything else, by all means. And when it comes to Bev Bevan leaving the band like that, I do grant you that was not the last thing that actually broke apart ELO, but I'm sure that factored in. And the only person who could answer that himself is Jeff Lynne. Jeff Lynne needs to state, yes, Bev Bevan started walking out of the band, and this happened, and finally, because of all these events that were happening, I finally broke up the band. But I'm sure Bev Bevan's departure played somewhat of a role in his decision. Not all of it, but I'm sure it played some part in it. Because you don't have a band member that stays there for 16 years suddenly go, hey, you know what? I don't want to be here anymore. That's not a good sign for the band. Of course, like I said, there were other things, there were other factors. Their last two, quote, hits weren't that big of a deal. They were a deal, granted, they were, and they were good songs, but they weren't all that memorable. I don't remember either one of them. I hadn't even heard them until the other night. Sorry to disappoint you on that, but the average ELO listener would not even think of them. That'd be news to them. So, yes, the diehard people would probably remember, but like I said, I liked the band, I liked a lot of their music, but I wasn't that diehard with them. Bee Gees were a little different story. I really was a diehard Bee Gees fan, but ELO, as good of a band as they were, and they were a good band, but I wasn't as enthralled with them as I was with the Bee Gees. I wasn't as enthralled with them as I was with ABBA. But I still do listen to ELO music, and I still think it's great. And if Jeff Lynne ever decides to go back into the disco phase, I'm all for it. I'm thrilled he's still playing. As a matter of fact, when he joined up with the Traveling Wilburys, he actually produced a couple of songs that I thought were excellent. Well, I don't know that he actually produced them, but I do know that he played a key role in that. I'm sure that George Harrison participated in that, so did Tom Petty, so did Bob Dylan, and so did Roy Orbison. So I didn't say, I should have rephrased that and said I'm sure he played a part in the production of the Traveling Wilburys album. And I'm probably correct on that. How much of a role, I don't know, and I'm sure you guys will critique me on that, and that's fine. All for it. If you guys could dig up specific details saying, this was what Jeff Lynne did, and this is what George Harrison did, and this is what Tom Petty did, and so on and so forth, go for it. I'd love to read it. So, fair critique. You guys did a good job. Thank you very much for your responses. This is nice. This is really nice. I'm thrilled you guys did this. So, anyway, hopefully this was a fair response to all of you. And keep up the good work. I really say that. You keep up the good work. Alright. I will tell you more in a future video, so I would like for you to stay tuned.